There's no reason why that couldn't be your story.
You don't have an expiration date.
I love that.
The actual pages. Like, that's all that matters at the end of the day.
This is the Authors and Agents podcast. Maggie, I am so excited to have you here with me today. I adored your book, Rules for Second Chances, and I'm so excited for the rest of the world to experience it too. So I'm excited to hear about this book. I'm excited to hear about you and your journey, but let's start off by getting a little blurb for Rules for Second Chances from you.
Hi, Rose. I am so excited to be here today as well. I love the podcast. I would love to tell you about Rules for Second Chances as well. So, it's a contemporary romance about Liz Lewis, an introverted woman with social anxiety who gets fed up with being overlooked both at work and in her personal life, and more or less like throws a grenade into her life in an effort to get noticed. So, she blows up her marriage with people pleasing cinnamon roll Tobin and designs her own confidence building boot camp to help her get noticed at work, including an improv comedy class that her boss wants her to take. Of course, she is terrible at improv comedy, so her instructor tells her to find a practice partner, and because it's romance, the only person willing to practice with her is Tobin, who wants her to do this experimental improv comedy based marriage resuscitation manual with him. So the two of them end up in all kinds of embarrassing public situations on the road to repairing their relationship. And on the way, Liz discovers her own neurodiverse identity as well. I'd say it's like half funny, half tearjerker, all Canadian. I'm Canadian, if you couldn't tell from my delightful Canadian accent. As far as tropes go, it's marriage in crisis, second chance, grumpy sunshine, introvert, extrovert, opposites attract, workplace rivalry, meddling families, small town in a way, like it's
Yeah,
set in a ski resort town
yeah.
that has a local population of about 20,000, but an annual visitor count of like a million. It's got neurodiverse and bisexual rep from me, a bi autistic writer. There's shenanigans, pratfalls, cosplay, snarky remarks. Lots and lots of classic rom-com Easter eggs for fans of rom-com movies. Uh, and it's also got some deep questions that I'm hoping will really resonate with readers, like who gets to have a happily ever after? What kind of partner does an extroverted cinnamon roll quote deserve? Like the partner that everyone thinks is an identical match for them in looks and temperament, or is it the partner they choose for themselves? And if saying no to other people in order to protect your marriage is emotional labor, and I think it is, then how should that be shared between spouses? And lastly, like what qualities make a good leader? And who picked those qualities, historically speaking? And how have they advantaged and entrenched the kind of people who already got more opportunities to lead? Anyway, it's
So
fluffy,
good.
it's deep, it's all the things.
It is. It is fluffy and deep. I'm like thinking back to like different moments in my head, and there's just such like an array of things that emotions you're going to experience when reading it. It's so wonderful. So I I'm pretty sure it was Jessica Joyce who posted about it on her Instagram one day. She loves to she's so good at like everything she recommends. I'm like, okay, I absolutely have to read because I adore her. And I think it was when your book was like a read now on NetGalley, and I was like, okay, boom, going. Jessica says it's good to read. Let's read it. And I think it was very different than what I think or what romance I had been reading, right? Like I hadn't read a whole lot of marriage in crisis. I was like, what is this going to be? And I was just so overwhelmed and like in a good way, like loved it. It was so refreshing and so well done in a voice that was just like wonderful. I My stepdaughter has autism, and so it was interesting for me too to just read about this adult who's learning she's autistic and all these things. Like it hit me in such a great way. So I mean, Maggie, wonderful job. Seriously, everyone, you need to go read this book. It is so good.
I'm so happy you mentioned Jessica Joyce because I think we're all a little in love with Jess.
We are, we
And
are.
she is a really wonderful, supportive member of the writing community. Like, can't say enough good things about her. And her
Yeah,
books, they are unbelievable.
unbelievable. She actually and I've told her this, she like totally changed my reading pattern. So when I restarted my podcast last year after a 2-year break for finishing my bachelor's and being a mom, she was my first episode back and read her book You with a View and was just like, what is this amazing romance category? Like I'd never really read it before. Really was a lover of like murder mysteries. And romance sometimes has mystery, like can be murdery, but not as much. But man, it was just like such a great introduction into this genre, and I've been obsessed with it ever since. So much so that I changed from writing murder mysteries to writing romance too. So Jessica, I've told you this already, but you are very influential to a lot of people.
She changes lives.
She does change lives. So Maggie, let's talk about your journey to this point. So you have your debut novel coming out, which is so exciting. So how did that look for you, getting through publishing to this point?
I love this question, mostly because I love failure resumes. I don't know if you've heard that term, but
I
I
like
am
it.
I'm a doctor by day and a scientist. And so there was this scientist a few years ago who came up with the concept of a failure resume, meaning, the resume other people hear is your success resume, but behind the scenes, meanwhile, you've been failing a lot.
I love that.
Anyway, behind the scenes, I have been failing a lot actually. So it's really, I think the best metaphor is a roller coaster, ups and downs, like you wouldn't believe. So you've done a couple episodes with Pitch Wars mentees Angela Montoya,
Mhm.
Alexandra Kiley, I should say. So I came up through Pitch Wars as well. I wrote my first romance novel in 2019. It was, I think, terrible is a good word to choose for that. It didn't have any main character development or plot to
There
speak
you
of.
go. There you
It did have great side characters. It had, yeah,
go.
it had tons of like old school melodrama, like bad boyfriend, controlling prospective mother-in-law, public dumping. Like, oh my God, I loved
Perfect.
it. I loved it, but it was not good. It did not get into Pitch Wars that year. So down phase on the roller coaster when I was not selected, um, and did not even get one request. But the important thing that happened at that time was that I connected with other writers and found like online romance writing communities and my first critique partner.
Mm.
So I shelved that book, read a bunch of craft books, started my next book, and got onto that phase of the roller coaster where you're going ka-chunk, 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 up to the top of the first biggest hill, right? Lots of work, steady progress. So in 2020, I finished my second book, which was called Charm Campaign. It was about an autistic woman who is running for mayor in her small town. And guess
Mm.
what? The captain of the football team turns up to run against her,
Perfect.
10 years after high school.
I love
So
it.
I was determined to enter and win some contests as a way of showing agents that my work came with some bona fides. So I applied to Rev Pit,
Hmm.
another online mentorship program. Again, I did not win, another down on the roller coaster. But I ended up working with one of the Rev Pit editors. And the work I did based on her feedback was another huge level up. Later in 2020, I started querying at the same time as I entered Charm Campaign in Pitch Wars 2020. And it ended up getting selected by Ruby Barrett and Rosie Dannon, um, which was one of the hugest moments in my life. Screaming, crying, throwing up because I admire both of them so much and love their books and love what they've done for the genre in terms of moving it forward, embracing sex positivity, championing diversity, like generally being the most amazing people in the world. They're my moms. I love them. So, revised the book again through Pitch Wars. Early 2020, when I got my first agent out of the Pitch Wars showcase. Um, so huge upward momentum, top of the roller coaster moment. And then you might be able to tell what is coming next. I went on sub with Charm Campaign, and you have never heard of this book because it did not sell.
Exactly.
Bottom of the roller coaster. Yeah, ride is broken, devastation. I loved that book, and editors did not love that book.
Mm,
Um, so I ended up parting ways with my agent after less than a year. And
mm.
at that time, I wondered whether my writing career was over with these two black marks on it, like unsold
Wow.
book, broken relationship with my agent. And the book, no other agent would touch it because it had been rejected by too many publishing houses. So
Right.
the book died, basically. So, bottom of the roller coaster again. Good part was I had written another book when I was on sub,
Yes.
and I had titled it Fantasy League, which that title got dropped. It was about an introverted woman who loves romantic comedies and ends up reenacting scenes from classic romantic films with her estranged husband,
Hmm.
as part of a bonkers marriage manual. So I revised that book quite a few times before it became Rules for Second Chances. But by early 2022, it was ready to query. So, unfortunately, early 2022 was a terrible, terrible time to query. The publishing industry was basically on fire. Um, many books from 2021 and 2020 as well had been pushed back on their publication schedule.
Yeah.
So, basically, there were no spots in publication schedules to fill. Publishers weren't buying books, so agents weren't signing new clients. So I queried the book for 3 months. I got one nibble, and that
Mm.
agent eventually sent me a personalized rejection with some good, clear feedback on what she thought the book needed. I wrote her an email thanking her for the feedback, asked if she'd wanted to see the book again if I did her revisions. She didn't get back to me at the time, and I figured, fair, like agents often just don't want to talk to like querying authors like 1,000 times.
Right.
So I entered RevPit again, and luckily, Megan Records, one of the RevPit editors, picked the book, and we did this key developmental edit to simplify the plot and let the romance breathe on the page. Felt great about it. Going into the showcase, roller coaster up, and then I actually didn't do well in the agent showcase, which was in
Mm.
June 2022. Roller coaster down. But the agent who'd nibbled in January reached out to me by email after RevPit asking to see the new manuscript.
There
And
you
a week
go.
later, she asked for a call. And that was Claire Friedman, who is now my agent. And I love her to pieces. Um, so I did revisions with Claire. We went on sub in September. We went on an exclusive submission to an editor who had expressed interest. That was Lisa Bonvasuto at St. Martin's. And it was kind of a dream. 2 weeks later, we had an offer. Um, and it just really illustrates how different sub can be. I kind of languished the first time and died. And then the second time was pretty quick, not entirely painless. Like there was some nail biting, but yeah. And that's my publication story.
I think I love this question because I love that everybody's story is a little bit different. I love that, you see some stories where it's like the dream where it's like it happens in 2 months, but I think your story is the one told more often. And I think too sometimes hearing that a book can die on sub, which is truly heartbreaking because that book sounds so good, um is like such a good reminder of this is a business, all of the things go into it, but also, that I think a lot of aspiring authors, querying authors think that once you sign it with an agent, like, okay, you've made it. The hard part is over, right? But there is still, like you said, there's a lot of things you got to still do on the roller coaster to after you sign with an agent. So I'm glad that it worked out the way it did. I imagine you feel like everything you went through led you to Claire as your agent and led you to Rules for Second Chances being your debut and all of that. But yeah, definitely a roller coaster journey for sure.
Yeah, it feels like there really was a lot of circumstance at play. Like I believe like The Charm was a great book that maybe happened at the wrong time.
Yeah.
I think there wasn't a lot of appetite for politics at that moment, in
Mm.
early 2021 especially. And so a lot of what happens in the industry is luck, and you just have to keep trying and, be ready for your chance to come.
Yes, so much of it is luck and timing. That's the thing I hear from authors over and over again. It's luck and timing, which can be a frustrating answer to deal with, but that's just the reality of it at times.
Mhm.
So, I'd love for you to give me maybe just like your top tip for authors who are in the querying trenches. Like, what would you say to someone who's just maybe a little downtrodden with querying?
Okay. So I've queried twice. Um, so hopefully this will be like an experienced answer. My big takeaway from those two experiences was that querying in 2020 was nothing like querying in 2022. And when I did it the second time around, I was getting a lot of outdated and, not that relevant advice because the situation in the query trenches was unprecedented.
Yeah,
So, my first tip for querying writers is to really carefully look at the advice you're getting, including from me, because I think the publishing industry is still in a state of flux and conditions are likely to change fast, which is going to make last year's wisdom obsolete in a lot of cases.
definitely.
My
Yeah.
second big piece of advice, yeah, definitely, right? Second big piece of advice, conduct yourself like a professional at
Mm.
all times, even when you're getting rejected, like maybe
Yes.
especially when you're getting rejected. You want to be someone agents want to work with. I've never asked my agent Claire why she reached out to me 6 months later, but in my heart, I believe it's because I sent her a kind, respectful, and professional email. And when I wrote that email, I felt terrible. I'd been hoping she would ask for a call, and she didn't. But I thanked her for the feedback on my manuscript and told her it was my pleasure to query her, which it was because she is a consummate professional and you can rely on her word like 100%. And I did that with every agent who responded to me personally. So I think it's as long as you're being kind and respectful, like nothing you do when you're querying is wrong.
Yeah, I
Third piece of advice. Yeah,
yes,
go
keep
ahead.
going. No, you keep going. You keep going.
Okay. Oh, so my third big piece of advice is to get connected with whisper networks. In my opinion, agents have three cardinal qualities, which are cash, communication, and care. Cash means they can sell your book. Communication means they'll help you navigate the publishing industry by answering your emails, giving you advice, like generally staying in touch. And care means they will talk you down if you're freaking out. Cash is great, but if your book doesn't sell, your agent needs at least one of the other two qualities, or you're going to be really unhappy. So, Publishers Marketplace will tell you who can get you cash, but Whisper Networks will tell you who can get you the other two things. Or, like, even take a look at the acknowledgments section of the books you love and see who's written their agent like an epic poem
Mm,
and who's thanked their agent at the end of a long list of people with 5 words and my agent, first name, last name, right? So, an agent who's a bad fit for you can really impact your confidence and like take up a lot of your time.
definitely. I think, we forget as authors that it's a two-way relationship, right? Like you're not just like any literary agent, take me, please sign me. Like you are the one with the product and the art that they are going to sell. Make sure that that is the right fit for you because as I'm sure you know, like having to draw, part ways with an agent is no fun after you've put in so much work through the whole querying process and on sub and everything else that could happen. I think those are all great pieces of advice.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. Like, I don't want to criticize my first agent. Like, she just wasn't a good fit for me personally.
Yeah,
But yeah, like, don't forget that you're the talent and don't forget to
exactly.
value yourself. And remember that you deserve to be treated professionally too.
Yes, yes. It is a two-way relationship. I've had a lot of agents on this podcast and that is, great a great way to think about it too and make sure you're interviewing them on the call as much as they're interviewing as much as they're interviewing you because you're right, Maggie, authors are the talent. So it's definitely a two-way
Yeah.
relationship. Both should be valued and respected, but I think and I've had this mindset in the past too of just like, oh my gosh, I wish any agent would take me on as and sign me, but it's like that's not the mindset we want to have, guys. We want to be a little bit above that
Yeah, you're totally right.
because it does feel like a dream to be signed, but you want to make sure it's the right fit. So
Yeah,
speaking
a dream, not a nightmare.
yes, a dream, not a nightmare, and it could quickly be a nightmare if you don't do your research. So what is like the main thing you hope readers take away from rules for second chances?
Okay, so I like to say, at least I made myself a little tagline for my website, that I write beach reads that fill your heart and change your mind.
Mm,
And at its heart, Rules for Second Chances is about who gets opportunities in our society and who doesn't. So, as we've mentioned, Liz, the main character, she's introverted and she's socially anxious. And during the course of the book, she also discovers she's autistic, which I discovered as an adult as well. So, when I was writing this book, I was digging into research about how autistic people are perceived by allistic people. And allistic is a word that means, you don't have autism.
okay.
So, the answer is that allistic people in general don't like us. There was a study in Nature, which is one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the English speaking world, that showed that based on the way autistic people move and speak, allistic people can tell we're different in less than 5 seconds, and they are less likely to want to interact with us based on these thin slice judgments. Um, and I knew I was taking a risk writing an autistic main character who is ambitious, who poses uncomfortable questions, and worst of all, she's married someone who is apparently way above her in the social pecking order.
Right.
Um, and I knew some readers wouldn't like her, and some would feel she didn't deserve her cinnamon roll husband, and I knew some of that unlikability would be because she is autistic, and I thought readers would probably be making these same thin slice judgments. So there's also another character in the book, Eleanor, who's a 6-year old who is an autistic child. And so what I wanted to do with both Liz and Eleanor was show them being loved for who they were, and even if they were not what you expect, even if they weren't perfect all the time. Um, I wanted to show them being really accepted by their communities, really, really loved, really embraced. So I guess what I'd like people to take away from the book is a willingness to question how we prioritize likability, and especially for women, and most especially in our leaders. And I'd like us to question the reasons we find people unlikable. I mean, sometimes it's justified, like when somebody's acting in a way that's objectively creepy or an actual threat to our well being. And sometimes you just find somebody unlikable, even though they haven't said or done anything wrong. And so, if I can get people to question those judgments, then I've succeeded.
I love that. I love that they're and I think you succeed in those things as you read the book. But that's what I love about um what 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 you've done with Rules for Second Chances, because it is a love story, it's a romance, you get the feels, you get all of that, but then you do get all these things that you're talking about, and leaving us with a little bit more to think about after we're done.
Yeah, it's chewy. It's on the chewier side for a romance.
It is, but I like it. I like when there's a little chew to my romance.
Thank you. Oh, I just snorted.
It's all right. It's all right. So, when you're actually in the act of writing, you're in the thick of it. What is like your favorite thing about writing? And then what's the most challenging thing about writing for you?
Oh, writing is really fussy and fiddly, which tends to be the kind of activity I'm really drawn to. I love the feeling of especially solving a plot problem in revisions, or suddenly understanding a character in a way I didn't before.
Mm,
And that's something that usually doesn't come in the first draft. That comes with writing a book, reading it, writing it again, reading it again, writing it again. Um, an author I really love is Annabelle Monaghan, and she once said she really didn't know her characters until the fourth draft of a
mm,
book. Um, and this year, I've been realizing how incredibly wise that is. Um, so that's what I love about writing a book, is getting up in drafts and just like really, really polishing it to a very high shine. Um, in terms of challenging things, for me, the most challenging thing about writing is the transition from a highly polished final draft of a book to the messy, flawed first draft of the next book.
yes.
Oh, that is it's so
Yes.
scary. You tell yourself it shouldn't be scary, like you reassure yourself all the time, and you're just terrified beginning to end. Well, I am anyway.
I agree with you. I definitely remember that transition. You're like, okay, good. done. It's so perfect. Okay, wait, now I have to start over with something new and it's going to be terrible. You know,
Yeah.
terrible until we make it better, but
Seems
still,
unfair.
it does seem unfair. It should just come out perfect after we've been doing it for so long.
Exactly. I would like to complain to the manager of writing about that.
Yes, exactly. Again, great idea, poor execution, like we were talking about before we hit record with our internet.
Yeah.
Yes. So, my next question is about genre hopping. If you were to genre hop, do something different, write something different, what would you most like to try?
Oh, I would love to write a thriller like The
Ooh,
Writing Retreat. I don't know if you've read that
I have
one.
read that one.
Um, yeah, oh God, it's good. And I want to be clear that I have no idea how to write a thriller, but I love the complicated dynamics that evolve in small closed groups like, insular neighborhoods or toxic workplaces or high school friend groups like,
Yeah.
and I think we all feel like writing something stabby sometimes. You know what I mean? Like,
There's something about writing something stabby sometimes. I'll give you that.
yeah,
Oh yeah, a thriller would be great. And you could even do a thriller with a little bit of romance in it, right? But there is something so great about books like that just suck you in and you're like, I absolutely have to keep reading and know what happens.
absolutely. Like a good romantic suspense. They are
Yes.
tricky to write, but I would love to write one.
Well, exciting. Maybe someday down the road we'll see one from you. So I've got a few questions left for you. I'd love to know throughout your writing journey who has been or who have been, am I not using words correctly? Who have been your biggest supporters? There we go. Oof, I had to think about that one a little too hard.
Yeah, I'll call back to my advice to find your writing community because some of your most important supporters are going to be your critique partners. And I'm
Mm,
very lucky to have two really brilliant ones. Like, can't think of enough good adjectives for them. And they're Alexandra Kiley and Sarah Brenton. We talk literally every day. I would bury a body for them, and I know they'd do it for me too. I honestly would not be half the writer I am without Sarah pushing me to take more risks and Alex patiently explaining my own book to me. Um, but yeah, um, the person who has actually supported my writing the most and for the longest time is my spouse, Jackson Thunderbolt. That is the pen name he chose for himself, by the way.
I love it.
Um, he's really funny and quick. And I'd say I got my ear for banter from talking with him. He's kind of a better person than me in every way, I'd say. And he makes me want to be better too, which is the organizing principle of romance, which is you meet somebody who makes you want to be the best version of yourself. He's never read my book because I asked him not to, uh, but he's made the space for me to write books. He was the first person to buy my book when the link went live on Amazon.
Mm.
Um, and when Claire requested a call, I am probably going to get emotional when I tell this anecdote. Anyway, he hugged me for a really long time and he said something I'll never forget, which was like, I'm proud of you, Megs. You worked so hard. You could have given up and you didn't. I really think this is the one. He's kind of a romance hero, honestly.
I love him. I
Um,
love him already. I love
yeah.
him for you. That's so amazing.
Yeah, he's a fantastic support and yeah, like to have a supportive partner at home, I think is something that if you don't have it, like you're really going to struggle.
Yeah, you need to have the supporters in all the different circles. Like I love that you have your critique partners because it's so helpful to have somebody who's in the industry who knows, who can read your work and give you that critique that you can trust and that's valuable. But to have the people with you at home be your biggest supporters too is crucial because it is such a solitary, time consuming thing that we do. And if you've got family, kids, work, pets, all the things that you could have, right? I mean, you've got to have people to help pick up the slack or just allow you the space, like you said, to get done what you need to get done.
Yeah, it is so true. And especially like if they go like even a little above and beyond of like getting you into your writing cave, like
Yeah,
he will do these kind little things for me. Like sometimes I'll just find a chocolate bar on my writing desk with a little post-it note on it.
that's too
So
sweet.
like, support plus, A plus for Jackson.
My husband is like the best. He leaves little love notes everywhere. Like he'll hide them in the book I'm reading.
Oh,
So I don't get them for like, well, I read a book in a day, but like I won't get it till a couple hours later. Or I'll find them, like under my pillow. So when I go to bed, they're all over the house. That's like, it's so funny being married. Like I didn't know that that was like a love language I would enjoy, like the words of affirmation and all those things. But man, he is good at it. And he's made it something that is just like so wonderful. So when I see a little note, it's like, oh, I know that 8 hours ago, or sometimes it's like 2 weeks till I find him. And I'm like, that's the best too.
I feel like I need to put that in my next book where, somebody has planned a surprise and they're waiting for it to activate, right? Like it's hidden.
Right?
They know you'll find it, but
Yeah.
they don't know when, right? And
Could be anytime.
they must feel so much, yeah, like so much anticipation, so much joy, like that they've thought of you, they've got this item, you're gonna find it. Like it's kind of time release happiness. All right, I'm writing it in.
Do it. Do it. Please. I can't
Next
wait to
book,
see it.
100%.
Yes. Exciting. I
Yeah.
love it. So Maggie, I just have two questions left for you. I'd love to know what like your writing fuel is. So maybe not while you're writing because crumbs, but like what's your favorite snack or like a drink that really helps you keep going? The chocolate bar, obviously, but
Uh,
maybe what else?
this is actually it's kind of a sad question because I had to get braces as an adult for some functional problems
Oh
with my
no.
teeth, and I know. So eating and drinking are like really high maintenance right now, and like a
Yeah.
lot of autistic people, I put a high premium on how food feels in my
Yes.
mouth, and braces are like a real buzzkill for just about every kind of food.
I bet.
Um, I used to love snacking when I wrote, though. I would eat Cheetos with chopsticks to get rid of the
Oh
crumbs, right? So you
gosh,
wouldn't
that's
have the
so
orange dust on your
smart.
fingers.
Yes.
I know you can eat just about any snack food with chopsticks. Um, and I used to mainline Earl Grey tea with honey.
Mm,
But just looking at a cup of tea will stain my teeth right now, like because of braces issues.
yeah.
So sometimes I drink plain hot water and regret my choices. It's a real like low point in snacking. But when they're off, oh my God, it's gonna be open season on snacks.
You drink the hot water and you're just like, I wish this was the Earl Grey. I wish this was tea, but it's at least hot.
Yeah, my husband calls it placebo. Do you know what I
Yeah. Yeah.
mean?
Throw a
He's like, "You
little,
making yourself some placebo?" I'm like,
yeah. Throw a little lemon in there. My mom, like, whenever we go anywhere, it's always hot water with lemon, is what she does. I don't know if the lemon will stain your teeth,
"Do you
though.
know what?
Hopefully not.
I think the lemon will be like an emotional support more
There
than
you go.
anything."
Yes, try it. Try it out. Well, my last question is easy. It sounds kind of hard, but it's not. I'd love to know what your favorite book is right now. Not your favorite book of all time, but just something you've read recently that you really want other people to know about.
Hmm. So I actually like to read nonfiction for writing inspiration. And Bittersweet by Susan Cain has been the main inspiration behind my second book. It's about how sadness and longing are necessary components of life,
Mm,
and how there really is no joy or spiritual transcendence without them. And I do write books that are both funny and sad, I hope. That's what I'm trying to write.
yes.
And it turns out that the balance of joy and longing are what life is all about. So highly recommend. It's great in audiobook as well.
I love that. I think that that is something we always need to remember, right? You don't know what joy is without having experienced sadness. We have to have the two to be able to understand both of them.
Yeah, you need the shadow behind the object to know how big it is.
Exactly, exactly. Well, Maggie, this has been lovely. I've so enjoyed getting to know you, hearing about your publishing journey, and I truly, seriously could sit and rave about rules for second chances forever. I read a lot of e-arcs and galleys, and I don't always have the room or the budget to like buy the things I've already read too because there's like a low chance I'm going to get the chance to read it again in physical form. but I've pre-ordered your book. I can't wait for it to be here and to read it in physical form, because it was truly so close to my heart and just something that I really enjoyed. So I think you did a wonderful job. I'm super excited for everybody else to read it and to see what you've got coming up next. It's going to be great.
Aw, thank you so much for the kind words. I'm not sure if you knew this, but all authors have a tiny shriveled heart, and words of praise just like give it life and make it bloom again like the desert. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you even more for pre-ordering. That's the kindest thing you could have done.
I'm so excited, and the words of praise about our books really is what makes our hearts so happy, right? It's nice
It's
to
a
have.
writer's love language. Yep.
It is indeed. Well, Maggie, I'm so excited, and um, I'm really excited for the world to see it, and thank you so much for joining me.